I've been able to play up to 4 hours of Assassin's Creed Shadows 2 months before its release, and I have some thoughts. Ubisoft was kind enough to invite me to one of their virtual preview sessions and allowed me to play AC Shadows for myself, also allowing me to share my honest, unadulterated thoughts on this game with you guys today. And that's what I'm going to do. Bear in mind, this is not like a review, this is not a first impression, this is more of like a first thoughts video. I only played 4 hours of an RPG game that will probably be well into the 3 digits mark when it comes to total playtime. It's an early build and a curated build at that. So this was simply a way to give me, and by extension you, a taste of what the game will play, look, and feel like. Right out of the gate, I will say that there's no story spoilers from me with this one. There will be many other creators who you can go to for that, but I won't be getting into them simply because I don't think it's the right thing to do 2 months before a game releases. We did play through a lot of story content, both the prologue of the game and a bit of like a main target hunt kind of story arc, and I don't want to spoil anything for you guys, so aside from some of the B-roll footage that you'll be looking at throughout this video, you'll be good watching this video. Also, everything I say, just to kind of set your expectations, is in the context of a Ubisoft Quebec game. This is still a big, open-world RPG game by the creators of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And credit to them, they have stayed true to their philosophy on this franchise and game design. They've improved on a lot of things that they needed to, but still within the framing of the kind of games they are interested in making. This is not a game that will make you a fan if you weren't a fan before, but this is also not a game that will make you not a fan if you are a fan right now. It's very much their kind of game, but bigger and more improved from the impression that I got. You know, at the start of this demo, the lead dev in a video said that their philosophy when making Shadows was to make the ultimate Assassin's Creed game. Look, there are many good things I have to say about the experience with this demo and this game overall. And I have, to be fair, only played a few hours. But this is not the ultimate Assassin's Creed game. And that's okay. It can still be a good, great, amazing game. It can even be an amazing or good Assassin's Creed game. But just don't fall for this idea that the ultimate assassin fantasy lies within this game, because it doesn't. I'm going to divide this video into 3 parts, basically following my demo experience and just share my thoughts throughout on the relevant things. The first part of this video will focus on the prologue and the tutorials, since that's the first half of the demo that I did. The second part of this video will focus on main missions and free roam, which was the second half of the demo. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about a few things that only the hardcore fans or more intense fans are going to be interested in. So I'll kind of save that for the end of the video for those who might be interested. I think overall, AC Shadows looks promising, though it is very much still the child of the RPG philosophy. There are great things about this game, some things that are the same, and depending on your taste and what you like, you could consider those things that stay the same to be good or bad. And then there are some things that, in my opinion, are outright ugly. As mentioned in this demo, we played 2 main parts. First, the prologue, which showed us the character origin stories and introductions, as well as some gameplay tutorials just to kind of get to grips with how to play this game. And the prologue first shows us kind of how Yasuke came about, how he got to Japan, how he became a samurai, and kind of similar with Naue. We kind of just see their beginnings, their philosophies, and what kind of motivates them for the rest of the game. It's something that keeps getting alluded to throughout the missions. To avoid spoilers, I won't go into too much detail about their stories and their origins, but just know that the prologue is basically that, just presenting you the world of Japan, the time period that it's in and the political climate, and showing you that through the lens of 2 very different characters who are living 2 very different lives with 2 very different perspectives. So now that I've had some proper time with them, what do I think of these 2 protagonists, Yasuke and Naue? Honestly, I think they're fine. Neither of them have left any particular imprint on me the way that Bayek did in the opening scene of AC Origins, but they're definitely not like Alexio's level jarring. Their voice actors aren't on the level of Bayek, Ezio, Edward, and honestly their mocap performance doesn't really help them either. And honestly, neither does the script. But none of these things that I mentioned above, like the mocap, the script, and the voice acting, are bad either. Like, the script isn't bad. It's just not writing that's particularly memorable or stunning. The voice acting is the same. It's not robotic, but you can tell that these lines were rehearsed and recorded, and it kind of drags you out of it, like the whole immersion factor. These voice actors are good. They do their job well, but they aren't kind of like home run castings that I could find, at least in this demo. This is an issue that the RPG games have had for a long time, and that's not changing here. Everything that you've seen in terms of quality of presentation when it comes to voice acting, scripting, and mocap is exactly the same in Assassin's Creed Shadows. I think these 2 characters will be decent vessels for the story they're going to tell, and gameplay-wise they do 100% have their own personalities, strengths, and weaknesses, which was kind of the main pitch for having dual protagonists, is kind of having 2 different gameplay archetypes. So yeah, overall good protagonists, but I doubt they'll become icons in the future. During these narrative prologues, we kind of get the lay of the land and also get an ongoing tutorial on how to play the game. Now, talking about the lay of the land, throughout my entire demo, there were 3 things that kept stunning me and just like stopping me in my tracks. I was honestly super impressed by these 3 things. The first was the soundtrack. It's just phenomenal. In cutscenes, in stealth infiltration, during combat. From what I heard, this is really up there as one of the best soundtracks in the franchise, and I don't think that I'm exaggerating with that. I was like fully vibing to the music the whole time. The graphics and art direction, once again, incredibly impressive. Japan is a naturally beautiful country, and joining that with Ubisoft's consistently goated art team has resulted in exactly what I would expect: a gorgeous, breathtaking open world. And the third thing that blew my mind was the weather system. This is something that they talked about in marketing a lot, how you had this kind of innovative, next-gen, dynamic weather system, and I thought it was just a bit of a gimmick, but honestly, when I play it and seeing how naturally it's woven into the environment, the way you see the wind and storms and rain and lightning kind of blend in and out as you play the game is pretty mesmerizing, and I was pretty impressed because what it does is it ups the value in a cinematic sense. And what you want from a game, especially something like an Assassin's Creed game, is cinematic value outside of cutscenes. You want to feel like as you're playing the game, you're making your own cinematics in your own way through your own actions. And the weather system really supports that when you're doing anything in this game. The tutorial itself begins with combat, which is thematically relevant to how the game is designed, and tells people immediately the kind of gameplay that it prioritizes. Though I do truly believe that both gameplay styles are viable, not like in Valhalla where you were told like, oh, you can do stealth in combat, but then you could never do stealth. I do think both of them are viable, but a lot of the missions do necessitate combat, with your character being flung into boss fights pretty often. That kind of sets the tone for what this game is and what the priority is for Ubisoft Quebec. You can do everything in combat, but you can't do everything in stealth. You can play most of the game in stealth, but eventually you will be flung into open combat and you'll have no choice. It won't be through a mistake of being detected. It'll just be a scripted moment that you have to kind of deal with. And you know, Naoe is noticeably worse at combat, which is fine. It's kind of what you want. You want to select and feel like a fragile assassin who will be in danger if she's in combat. That's generally a good thing, but it's not when you feel like you've been literally forced into combat, and then you have to play in a way that you haven't chosen with a character that isn't good at it. That can definitely be a little bit frustrating. There are times that you don't have a choice with combat, and there are times where a decision taken will lead you to combat when it could have been avoided. Like if you have a dialogue choice and one option is getting into combat and the other isn't, but the game makes no effort to tell you beforehand. Unless it's an obvious like we fight now or we don't fight, sometimes your answer will just make people flip out and want to fight you, and you have no choice in kind of backtracking that choice unless you die.
Friends are a rarity in this business. You can trust me.
First you tell me all shipments are compromised. Now you're asking to see the rest? I'm choosing to slit your damn throat. How's that sound? You are no match for me. He moved.
Kanbei has added additional security around the town. What do you think will happen when he finds your stockpile?
Since when?
You are asking me. Would you call our recent activities at Himeji Castle a success?
I assure you, Hontokoji is like a fortress. Not even a crow can fly through its doors.
Hontokuji, a temple. All I wanted to know. Lay low like the rest of us, and Lord Yukinaga will come through.
Fine. Tell him to pick things up. Our business in Harima remains to be finished.
Overall though, combat is pretty straightforward and pretty good. It's also pretty similar to previous entries. You have light attack and heavy attack. You need to parry enemy attacks in order to protect yourself and weaken them. And enemies are pretty damage spongy. They're nowhere near how much of a damage sponge they were in AC Odyssey, but you will notice that slicing a human being with a katana 5 or 6 times just won't quite kill them for some reason. You have your set abilities as well that you can trigger once they're charged up, and some cool animations and executions for the enemies. It's not revolutionary, but it works and it feels good to play. One thing I will say in favor of AC Shadows is that the dual protagonists do feel very different. Naoe is noticeably shit in combat, and you can tell by this compilation of me dying.
Fast, but not fast enough.
And Yasuke is an absolute beast. He's an absolute monster in combat, so if you're more of a combat person, there is a clearer archetype that will facilitate that playstyle. Overall, I think this is a good thing. I do think that if you're going to have dual protagonists, they should feel like they are different to play as. And for the most part, it seems like the game gives you complete freedom of who you want to play as. So you will never feel like, oh, you want to do stealth, but the game is forcing you to play as the combat character. Outside of those things I mentioned, that sometimes you are flung into combat. But you can pretty much always play as Naoe, which is kind of what I plan to do. The stealth tutorial with Naoe is pretty straightforward too, and although stealth is definitely not what it was in AC Unity or Brotherhood, it's still pretty good. I was pretty happy with the stealth. I would put it at a similar level as AC Mirage, and I would take that as a compliment. Animations for kills are absolutely beautiful. Naoe is deadly with a hidden blade, and the animations are consistent in terms of length and what they look like, so you can kind of learn how to plan your approach stealth-wise without freaking out in terms of how long a stealth animation will take or where it will take you. Something they also do, which I really appreciate, is maintain momentum, which for me is pretty important. If you're sprinting towards an enemy and assassinate someone, Naoe will do this cool like in-movement kill compared to if you just walk up to them or do a cover assassination, and that always comes in handy when you're trying to maintain momentum during a stealth section. When it comes to tools and tool usage, it's pretty basic, at least it was in this demo, but it's fun and it works well. Smoke bombs are functional, and so are noisemakers. We have a whistle to attract guards, which is useful, but you don't really see like the wave of where the whistle goes, so you don't really know how many guards will be caught by this whistle, so that'd be a decent thing to add, I think. You also have the standard tall grass and the usual stealth stuff that you have in these games. I guess the most exciting additions for stealth are things like going prone, which is cool but not functionally all that useful, kind of like crouching. Unless you want to reach an enemy through the water, for example, in which case being prone does help you. It's really not that useful outside of just like the cool factor. Some other cool features that I noticed in stealth is being able to grab someone and take them somewhere more private to, kill them as well. And you have some of the more fancy things like swing assassinations, double assassinations and such that will be available in the game, but honestly I wasn't able to experiment much with. Another thing you should know is that you can't insta-assassinate everyone, which is annoying. I think that this can be turned off in the settings, so it's not too bad, but as it is, unless you upgrade and max out your assassin, those 8 feet tall guards that exist in the world of Assassin's Creed now will need to be taken down in combat or completely ignored, since they will resist your attempts at stabbing them in their neck. I'm not a fan of this, honestly, but having the option to disable it in the menu is great, and it makes me not too upset that it exists. I mean, it's just like an optional thing. Another cool thing in stealth are some of the new hiding spots that we haven't seen before that are very ninja-esque, like this box that you can trap yourself in for some reason and then kill an enemy. And that's kind of stealth and combat tutorialized. The rest of the narrative prologue showed a lot of the cutscenes, and the quality of the 3D models and environment are as high quality as you would expect. Every sculpt looks stunning, the costume design is phenomenal, and this is a fair game to claim it can only exist in next-gen consoles, even if it's not this generational jump that we saw from, let's say, Black Flag to Unity. It does kind of earn its statement when it comes to not being on PS4. So once we finished the prologue, we were able to jump into the open world, into an area of the map called the Harima province. And that allowed us to roam around and also play an entire section of the story where we hunt down one of the main targets. I think it was the first target, because this is set months after the prologue, the introduction to the characters. Again, I'm going to avoid spoilers throughout all of this, so I'll talk in generic terms, share my thoughts, and talk about the gameplay much more than the story. Something that was said when we were being presented this demo that kept popping up in my mind was that they wanted to encourage exploration more than they have in the past. They wanted to guide rather than tell you where to go. They wanted to not hold your hand and let you discover things for yourself. And to be honest, I didn't really feel like that was true in the game that I played. The most you have to do figuring things out is following like vague directions in the quest log of where your next objective is. Like they'll tell you, the objective is in this province, south of here, you have to find it. But then you go to the map and you find the general area, you go to where it tells you, and you'll see that there's 1 or 2 question marks of where it could possibly be. And it's going to be one of those 2 question marks. So it is appearing on the map. It just doesn't give you the specific icon, but you can just deduce from the information you've been given where it's going to be. And it's a pretty easy thing to do. You don't have to do a lot of thinking, and your compass is still littered with icons, including exactly where you have to go in a mission. So this idea of making you deduce where a target is or a mission marker is based on clues you need to reference against your environment is cool. And it is kind of present here, but not to the extent that I found myself easily being able to navigate without a HUD just by using the environment and the tools around me. And I did try to do plenty of that, and you can do plenty of that if you make an effort and, go into the settings and turn off your HUD and try and make yourself play in a more immersive way. But the claim that they want you to be less handheld, I don't think is true at all. If you keep everything on the HUD, first of all, your screen is bombarded with a bunch of things on your interface, and secondly, you can literally just follow the compass, follow the marker, never look at the environment, and play through the entire game. So I don't think that kind of natural exploration you see in Ghost of Tsushima or Elden Ring is true here. At least not in the 4 hours that I played. The mission structure is also mostly what you would expect from the franchise. You're given a few quests that you can do in any order, and they all work towards solving this kind of grand mystery of who your target is, where you can find them, and, more about the overall plot that's motivating your characters. These investigation missions have you go to a place, talk to a person, and subsequently do something. Whether that's steal something, fight someone, investigate a crime scene, talk to a merchant, the classic things that you see in these Assassin's Creed games. I think that mission design, that quest structure hasn't changed all that much. You basically have to do all of these things in order to find information that will tell you more about your target and where you want to go next. Throughout the entire arc, you get a lot of chances to switch the character you're playing as. So if you're playing as Naue, you can very often switch to Yasuke, and if you're playing as Yasuke, you can very often switch to Naue, which is something that I appreciate. First of all, because it kind of pauses the game, paces the mission structure, creates a checkpoint, and then lets you change your mind if you so wish. But also because it's good to have the option if you're gonna give the option, so you don't feel like you committed for the entire game and for a majority of the game to one play style if you then regret it. I personally stayed with Naue simply because I wanted to explore more of the stealth and the parkour. Speaking of which, the parkour. This was one of the first things that I tested, hoping to see some sort of improvement or skill level to it, since it was advertised quite a lot by the devs. If I'm being honest, it's the same parkour that we've seen since 2018. Probably worse than Mirage, mainly because the level design doesn't really accommodate it. You're mostly just running in a straight line on low-rise buildings for a bit before jumping back onto the ground, sprinting on the ground, and then climbing onto another building in front of you. The level design is nowhere near the quality that it is in Mirage, but it's not surprising since I know that this is not meant to be an old-style AC like Mirage was. But since they promoted it so much as a core pillar of the game, it's still sad that once again, movement and parkour haven't really been prioritized or given the space to breathe and evolve, especially after the big steps that we took with Mirage. It's also honestly pretty sticky when I play it, and because of the architecture of the buildings and the way they're laid out, you'll find your character kind of snapping a lot back and forth between different objects that you can run on. But overall, once again, the parkour is serviceable, it's fine, it's good, it's mostly consistent, but it's mainly used not as a form of self-expression or as a gameplay pillar in itself, but more as a tool of access and traversal. You use it to reach a high point during an infiltration, similar to like the rope dart climb, which is very cool and feels great, and you honestly use it for little else. It feels good to use when you need to use it. Like, climbing is fun, it feels responsive, it feels predictable, but it's not anything to write home about as a standalone traversal system. No matter how many backflips you see on YouTube and how many cool moments you see on YouTube, this is not a traversal system that you can even call a free running system. It's more just, climbing and running. But yeah, overall, it's fine and fun. Now, that being said, there are a few things that are better with this version of the parkour than previous RPG creeds. The first is that, well, this is true for at least Naue, she is much faster. I mean, she is quick. And that's good, because if the parkour system isn't deep, speed will at least challenge you or stimulate you enough to simulate that depth. You don't need button discipline to navigate the world, and you don't need to make that many decisions when traversing, but you do have to make decisions pretty often because of how fast she is, and that kind of stimulates you at least a little bit. The animations throughout the parkour are also just stunning, gorgeous, with Naue doing front and back flips all the time and flipping all over the place and running like a ninja, jumping onto those ropes and just looking like a badass the entire time, which is exactly what we want. Despite what I first thought when I saw the footage of the parkour, it doesn't feel like these flips will get old, but time will tell. Since I only played a few hours, maybe seeing these flips for 100 hours might get old. I'll talk about the more technical aspects of the parkour at the end of the video for those who care, but just know that it's good, it works, but nothing that we haven't seen before aside from the rope dart and maybe a better roll/dive function. Then you have the stealth. As I mentioned before, where I was talking about the stealth in the tutorial, the stealth is good, and so is the tool usage, though once again, for some reason, beyond all human comprehension, the assassination button is bound to the attack button. So you will still have that issue of accidentally attacking an enemy even if you're anonymous by pressing that button a moment too soon before the assassination prompt kind of appears on the screen. To play devil's advocate, you don't need to feel that anxiety to press the assassination button too soon if you're about to be detected, for example, by a guard, because you get a pretty decent window past your detection to still assassinate the enemy. Like, time slows down and you're given like 1 or 2 seconds once you've been detected to go up to your enemy and assassinate them. So that's pretty good, and it means that the anxiety of having to press the button as quickly as possible, meaning sometimes you pull out your sword and try and slash them instead of your hidden blade, doesn't really seem to be relevant. But still, I binded eventually my assassination to the triangle button just because I prefer it, and it allows me to play a bit more carefree. One thing that I really wanted to test that I really didn't have the time to was the light mechanic, like snuffing out the lights and being in the shadows. That's something that maybe some other people were able to do, and I'll be checking out their videos to see if they did. But that's something that I definitely want to explore more when I get my hands on the full game. Another issue with the stealth is that it's pretty loud. And by loud I mean that killing an enemy with the hidden blade when another guard is in front of you, even if they're not looking at you, even if they're looking the other way, if you kill someone behind them, they will turn around. Think of it as stealth and stealth takedowns being constantly in high profile. You can't really go behind guards killing one by one in a fast sequence because they will notice you and turn around. The stealth is much slower, rewards ghosting, isolating, and tool usage much more than quick successive stabbing. When it comes to the voice acting in the world and the open quests, I think it's decent, but once again, in the context that is this big RPG with many voice lines, and you can't have Hollywood-level actors delivering Hollywood-level lines. And the same goes for graphics and cutscene quality. As you know, it's the same thing. With side characters and side content, the cutscenes and the voice acting are pretty bad or lackluster at best, and then in the main story moments, they all look spectacular, everything's polished, everything's mocapped, and it looks great, and the voice acting is good. But nowhere, honestly, have I seen voice acting that's spectacular, at least for my taste. When it comes to the open world, at least what I explored of it, because I didn't get to explore much of it, it's very similar in terms of layout and composition to the rest of the RPG creeds that came before. The cities are beautiful, but not very vertical and not very large, so parkour opportunities don't really exist in the cities that I saw, or the city that I saw. And there's mostly a lot of open space and wide fields and forests that you will have to travel through for ages with your horse or by foot. One thing that I will say in favor of this, compared to something like Valhalla, is that even though I had limited time to play, and I wanted to get a lot done so I can comment on it, I couldn't help myself but sometimes slowing or stopping just to take the beauty of the world in. Especially with Naue, it was just so cool to just walk sometimes and take in the lighting and the color palette that these artists have created for Japan. So I will say, even though it is the traditional big city with some forts and some missions, but not a lot of parkour, and then the rest of it's just like a field, it is absolutely stunning, and I do enjoy the art direction a lot. When it comes to the interface, the menus, and items, I was once again pretty impressed. The quest board, it is the tried and tested investigation layout with leads, targets, and unfolding quests that kind of grow as you progress through the story. You have a mastery section to get better at a particular playstyle, and then your inventory is cool. It seems much simpler. Now you only have like a base outfit, a hood, and then your horse and weapons. And this is kind of where I want to have a side note, because I hate, and I mean despise with every fiber of my being, the fact that Ubisoft Quebec believes that they need to remove our hoods in every cutscene. It's infuriating, it looks bad, it breaks immersion, the cutscenes are not good enough to justify it from an artistic standpoint, and even if they were, it's a game that prides itself on choice, so ridding you of the choice to see or not see your character's face depending on what you want is nothing short of ironic. I hate when hoods disappear in cutscenes when you're wearing them in-game. So yeah, just like in Odyssey, you're not going to see your hood in a cutscene for some dumb, incomprehensible reason. There was also one cutscene where Naue is wearing a completely different outfit in one frame, and then immediately in the next frame when gameplay starts, she's wearing a completely different outfit, has all her weapons and her hood, and it honestly just feels sloppy and lazy and makes this game feel very video gamey in a bad way. Like, this is something about the RPG genre, I guess, or specifically with Assassin's Creed that I just don't like. Like the transition between cutscenes and gameplay has no continuity whatsoever, and I don't like that at all. Apart from that though, the outfits themselves kick ass. In this demo we had access to 4 sets of outfits, all of which looked great. They weren't like mythological or silly outfits, they were truly cool, well designed, historically relevant, culturally relevant assassin outfits. So I really like them, and they all have their own perks and stuff. I don't really pay attention to that, but if you do, you can see on the screen some of the perks that they have. And this kind of brings me to something I want to say about Naue specifically as a character. Since I had more time with her, which I had on purpose, I want to say that I really, really like her. She's very charismatic, she's very kind, she has a decent voice actress, and she embodies the assassin persona and attitude to a T. I'm very happy that we finally get to play as a cool female Japanese assassin. I know that it's a completely different culture and a different country, but you can't help but be reminded of Xiao Jun when you play as her. When you walk around as her, her animations, her parkour, her style of killing just reminds you and makes you happy of playing as someone that's this cool and this likable. So I am really excited about spending more time with her and getting to know her more and getting to play as her. She's also an absolute fucking beast at fighting, at stealth, at parkour. She's got insane animations. And yeah, overall, I'm just very, very happy with her and the fact that I'm going to be playing as her, because since she's the stealth build, she's the one that I'm going to be spending most of the time playing this game with. So I'm happy that I like her and that I actually see myself becoming a fan of Naue. The mission design itself is also very fun. Nothing felt too phoned in or repetitive. You did have the same kinds of quests you've seen in older games, but the novelty of the tools and environments you're given does enough to make it feel fresh. The final infiltration, like the assassination mission, was probably my favorite part. Bear in mind, it's not a black box mission. Just like in Mirage and in Valhalla, these missions have scripted moments and checkpoints, so you can't just find the target by yourself. You have to kind of meet these checkpoints and do these required things in order to reach the final target, which I don't like. I wish that we could just find this target in a room and kill them instead of having to, complete an objective or a checkpoint in order to unlock this next section, because it feels like you're being restricted of freedom that you shouldn't be restricted from. But the sections that you do have to go through are pretty cool. I did it all in stealth, and it felt very tense, but it felt fair, and you work your way through this level slowly, uncovering more areas of this big fortress. And if you're interested in seeing no commentary stealth gameplay from my demo, you can check the video that I'm posting on my stealth channel, Altair Stealth. I managed to record some short but decent stealth sequences that I think you might be interested in seeing. The world of Assassin's Creed Shadows feels alive, as any Ubisoft game does, especially any Assassin's Creed game does. And I can tell that with more hours and getting greater mastery of the tools and abilities that we have, I know it'll be a world that I'm going to explore in depth, and I know this is a game that I'm going to sink a lot of hours into. Those were the two sections of my demo. That's kind of like the experience that I had playing the demo. And before I get into the more hardcore things that only the more intense fans will care about, I want to say thank you to all of you. I've only had this channel for a little over a year, and I've already gotten to a point where I'm getting invited to an event like this. And that's all thanks to you. Your support with subscriptions, likes, and comments truly means the world to me, and it's the only reason, I mean it, it's the only reason I'm even able to make this video today. So thank you so much for making this possible so quickly. So now, for the nerds and the edgelords, there are a few things I tested just to get my bearings on the game, the kind of mechanics that we have available, and how much of an improvement or not it is from the last few recent entries when it comes to the assassin fantasy. One thing that is missing, that is kind of a shame, is the chase mechanic. I was in a situation while doing this demo where Naue got ambushed by many shinobi, and knowing that I couldn't really survive a fight with them, nor did I want to fight with them, I ran. I fucking belted it. And I checked behind me to see if anyone followed. Nothing. Once again, it's stupidly easy to escape enemies, and they don't really make an effort to chase you. When it comes to parkour, I've spoken about it before, but I'll speak about it more technically now. There are no side ejects unless it happens in a very context-dependent scenario. I got a couple of them, but they're not really commonly available throughout the world just because the architecture is not there. And back ejects do exist, but they're simply back descents. They don't gain height. I don't think they allow you to hop from one wall to another, although again, maybe in specific contexts they do. But I think the back descents could be useful, since it seems to always prioritize the descent to the ground more than even parkour down. So if you're on a wall and you press parkour down, it might just go down to a balcony beneath you or a roof beneath you. But if you back eject, now it will basically backflip onto the ground. So if you want a consistent way of descending to ground level, I think that back ejects are useful for that. There's also no manual jump. Don't let anyone lie to you. I've seen comments being like, oh, manual jump is returning. It's not. Don't let anyone tell you that this game has manual jumps. You have a dive function, which is cool. You can dive as you're running. And it also serves as a roll, which is important. But It's nowhere near a manual jump, and nothing anywhere near a manual jump exists in this game. Honestly, from my experience, this parkour seems even more on rails than previous games, and Mirage's great level design is nowhere to be seen, at least in the section of the demo that I played. This is first and foremost an RPG. It was designed with combat and exploration and size in mind, with stealth and parkour being more of a feature than a whole game focus. See this as a spiritual sequel more to Odyssey and Valhalla, much more than Mirage. And I just want you to keep that in mind when you buy the game and go into it. Don't expect a Mirage kind of disciple, because it's not, you know, in terms of mechanics, in terms of level design, in terms of priority of stealth and parkour. It's just not that at all. Assassinations are loud all of the time. Like, nearby enemies will turn and detect you when you are in stealth. At least that was my experience. So when you kill a guard near them, just know they'll probably turn around. Just treat stealth kills as if they're high profile, which means you want to kind of kill guards either in a smoke bomb or in isolation, really far away from other guards. 1-2s in stealth are also quite functional, and the AI is pretty responsive to noise. It seems that noise is going to be a pretty good ally in stealth sections for you guys, meaning that you can whistle, noise bombs, and even smoke bombs can lure enemies or make them turn their backs, like you can see in this example here. You also have your typical environment tools like blowing up red jars and all the traditional stuff you've gotten used to, like hiding spots and tall grass and all of that stuff. It all works great, very consistent. I didn't notice many bugs with the stealth. Sometimes it can be frustrating because you feel like you killed an enemy far away enough to not be detected, and then some guard just somehow knows that you're killing a guard even though they're facing the other way, but that's just something that you have to get used to for the specific game that you're playing. From a technical standpoint, the prone position, as I mentioned, doesn't have much use, at least not that I could find, but it does allow you to have more stylish options on how to approach a fort or an enemy, and it does also have a use if you're approaching from the water, or if you want to minimize line of sight with the enemy. Like if you're trying to observe and not be detected by enemies, you can just go into the prone position and you'll minimize the line of sight that an enemy has on you. As always, the scale and the size of these restricted areas that you can do stealth in is absolutely colossal. And there will be a lot for you to do and be very creative with. I think there's going to be a lot of forts, a lot of, places where you can do stealth. But beware of the restricted eagle vision, because it is harder to know where all your enemies are and tag them, especially if you're someone who plays without a HUD like me. Some more technical stuff. The radius of the smoke bomb is pretty small compared to other games. Like the amount of space that the smoke takes up is much smaller compared to other games, like compared to Assassin's Creed Mirage, and it also doesn't last as long as Assassin's Creed Mirage. So I think the smoke bombs in one sense are a bit nerfed, but they're very strong in another sense. They're very well coded, and by that I mean that the smoke screen acts as a smoke screen that guards cannot see through even if they're not in the smoke bomb. And this is useful because now they're more than just a way to kind of rid guards of their vision, but you can use them in traversal to kind of create blankets that you can hide behind if you're trying to cross from one point of cover to the other, or if you're trying to ghost in a particular area. Smoke bombs are a great way to kind of paint a safe area within a non-safe area, if that makes any sense. It's very useful because you can create these blankets to hide when you're crossing corridors or other restricted sections, giving something like a ghosting playstyle much more optionality. When it comes to consumables as a whole, they seem pretty rare. Again, maybe because I only played 4 hours. With upgrades and progressing through the game, you can get to a point where you can just like spam consumables. But I didn't have that many throwing knives or smoke bombs to freely use, which makes you think a lot about the options and when you should be using them. As I mentioned before, sound plays a much bigger role in the game than before. And I do really enjoy that because it encourages you to slow down, it encourages you to think and plan and approach and lure guards, and it's fun because when you combine it with the restricted eagle vision, you do feel like you have to make an active effort and slow down and take your time in order to do something in full stealth. When it comes to assassin recruits, from what I saw, it seems to only function in combat, but I need to test that more. But if they only work in combat, I think that's a little bit useless. But maybe they can be sent to like assassinate someone and not just fight them. Another thing I want to talk about that old school fans will care about is the modern day and the Animus hub and everything that has to do with that. After and before the demo, we kind of got shown videos that told you about the new Animus hub and teased the new modern day. And it seems that the new Animus hub is called Animus Ego, and it's become like this wellness product or commercial product for the masses. The modern day plotline now seems to be inspired by the initiate duology, meaning you seem to be yourself, like you're the player in the hands of you're the protagonist as yourself. And you've been recruited by some mysterious person. I don't think they're the assassins. I think it's some sort of Isu figure who wants you to see the truth. The typical stuff. So intriguing, but not something that gave me more or less hope than I already had. It's kind of sad that we don't get to see and play as Basim in the modern day, but there are enough things that I saw in these videos that keeps me interested for the future. And I bet someone like Access the Animus will make so many videos analyzing this stuff that'll get me properly hyped. Also, at the start of the game, you have 2 gameplay modes, and they're very relevant to people that really want to immerse themselves and play in a very lore-accurate way. You have an immersive mode and you have a canon mode. I think the demo has told me that the immersive mode is one that kind of plays the game in the language it was designed to, so in this case Japanese, and the canon mode is one that makes choices for you, so it does kind of give you the DNA accurate, lore accurate choices that Naoe and Yasuke would choose. That's probably how I'm going to play the game a second time around. I'm not going to do it the first time because I'm worried the canon mode will also force me to play as Yasuke, and I don't want to fucking play as Yasuke if I can avoid it, because I like stealth in my assassin game. The Animus hub as a whole, Animus Infinity, seems interesting. From the video that I saw, it has 4 sections when you kind of get into the home page. It has the memories, where you can play as all of the assassins in Assassin's Creed games, and it's not presented as an Assassin's Creed game, but rather as different memories in a timeline. And it's really, really cool, because you kind of get to scroll through the timeline of when these games are set and play them in any order that you like. And it just looks really cool, very diegetic, very immersive, and I quite like that. Another one of the 4 sections is projects, which seems to be like additional content that you'll get, missions, and probably live service-esque content that you can play for rewards. Then you have the store, which again is where they'll just milk you for all your money. Probably my least favorite version. And then you have the vault, which is where the modern story will unfold, is what they say. Now, before you get excited about this, it seems to be mostly text-based log entries, like data entries. So we'll have to see if the modern day still exists within the mainline games, and I think it does from what I saw in the demo, and this is just an additional section, or if this is kind of the legacy feature for modern day where it just goes to slowly wither away and die. I do think that the modern day will be important going into the future of Assassin's Creed from what I saw in the demo, but this vault is really just kind of mild data entries that Access the Animus will make videos on, and then that'll be that. So yeah, those are all my thoughts that I could gather from one day of script writing. I'm sorry if these thoughts might be underdeveloped or rushed, but I had the preview one day before the embargo lifted because I had to be rescheduled, and I just had one day to write the script, record, and edit this video. I had a lot of fun playing this demo. It met my expectations. That's pretty much what it did. Everything that I was expecting this game to be and have, it did. It didn't surpass my expectations, but it didn't fall short, except maybe in the parkour. I think I was hoping a little bit more from the parkour, but overall, expectations met. Once I play and finish the game, I'll make my impressions video and review video, but until then, I'm going to make a prediction of what this game will be. I predict that this game is going to be very well reviewed by the greater gaming community, though I don't think it's going to be liked more or as much as Ghost of Tsushima. I think that's still going to reign supreme in terms of like feudal Japan setting. I think that the hardcore fans will feel pretty split when it comes to this game because the stealth and the assassin fantasy is there, and it's properly fleshed out, and you will have a lot to enjoy when it comes to this. But there are a lot of the RPG symptoms that a lot of us don't like and that I don't think makes a game better, such as the shabby voice acting, the shabby cutscenes, loot, gear, perks, lackluster parkour, not very fleshed out level design when it comes to movement, wide empty open spaces in between cities, dialogue choices, and just the stuff that you've already encountered a million times in these games that I don't think improves my gameplay experience at all. But I know that a lot of people also like it, so I think that if you're an RPG fan, I think you're really going to enjoy Shadows and enjoy, sinking hours into this game. But yeah, overall, I liked it and had fun. I think that the more I play it and the better I get, the more I will enjoy it. I do think that this game requires you to become familiar with it before you can truly enjoy it, because just because there's so many systems and so much content to kind of wrap your head around. And I'm looking forward to spending a lot of time with Naoe. I think I'm going to become a fan of Naoe, getting to know her, mastering playing as her. I feel like she's going to be a kick-ass assassin and probably one of my favorite assassins. But there are a few features that I wish could have made a return that didn't. And I actually made a video where I discuss those features and what I want to see return, and you can watch that right now.